In this movie, we're going to create the teeth that go with the lips we created. Now, there are paths right here for each of the teeth, but they will each be created in their own layer. We're going to start with the ones at the bottom. There are two teeth visible down here. Now, they're just about touching, so they can actually both be handled in one layer. So I'm going to select both of those, and we're going to create a layer right here behind the two. I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to create a whole folder right here, which we'll call teeth. And in there, we'll create another folder, which we'll put inside there, and we'll call this one bottom. Since there's so many layers involved, it's good to have them in little groups so that will make it easy. So I'm going to go in there and create the layer for those teeth, and we can call it teeth. And I'll pick a color for our teeth, which is going to be a slightly off-white, kind of like a gray like that. So I'm going to go in there, and I'm going to fill that path with those tones right there. So now I'm going to get a slightly lighter tone for the upper teeth. Now, all the darkening of these teeth is going to be handled by dodging and burning. We're not going to go and actually use colors here because of the fact that we want to have full control over the darkening and lightening of these regions. So now I'm going to start with the furthest to the left tooth. Now, the fact that it's overlapping a little bit here, it doesn't matter because that could easily be masked out later. So I've selected that tooth, and I go over to my layers, and I create another group on top of this, which will be the top teeth. And I'll create my first layer. Now, I'll call this 1, and I'll fill that path right in that layer. There. I will now select the second tooth. It overlaps on top of the other one. So we want that to be in a layer above 1. So I'll go in there and create 2 and fill the path like that. And in fact, let's keep this guy out so that we can have quick access to the paths as we need them. I'm now going to select the third, and in a third layer, I'll fill that path. Select the fourth. We call this layer 3. There we go. Now we select the layer on top of that, which we'll call 4. There it is, and fill that path. And then 5 right there. New layer, call it 5. Go in there and fill it. Now, this one is falling behind. So I'm going to go in here, hold down my command key, control on the PC, and create a layer behind 5, which I will call 6. Select that layer and fill it. Then right here, we have number 7. So behind this layer, I create 7 and go ahead and fill it. And then finally, this tooth back here, this last one, which we're going to have to do a little masking of the lips to have that tooth exposed. So we have that tooth, and here we create that last layer, which we call 8, and we fill that path. So there, now we have all the teeth in place. I can now turn off the paths, don't need them anymore. Now we're going to go in there and start to give these teeth the depth that they need. Now, the bottom teeth, they're both together. So I'm going to handle my teeth as one with the burn tool. And you notice that I have my exposure down to about 20%. So that gives me a lot of control. And I'm making the brush a little bigger here. Now I'm going to just start to darken these teeth down here. I'm going to darken this one right along this edge right there because it's hidden behind that tooth, which is casting a shadow. And right between them, I'll give it a little hit right there. And then just kind of heavily darken them right there. Then we're going to go to the top teeth. So we're going to start right here with number 1. It's the furthest back. So we're going to kind of darken that tooth quite a bit. And again, really darken along this edge because it's a little shadow being cast by tooth number 2, which I'm going to go in there and just kind of darken this edge, darken over here, and go along the top because the lips are now casting a little shadow on there as well. Just like that, and we'll throw a little extra darkness right in there. Now, the highlights will come in a second. So we got that. There might be a little bit of a highlight on this one. So let's just switch to our dodge tool and make the brush really small, and we'll just throw a little dab of highlight right there. Just a little tiny highlight. Tooth 3, we'll go in there with our burn tool, add the little shadow along the top, shadow from the lip, add a little shadow at that edge, a little shadow at this edge, and maybe a little towards the bottom, maybe just a little hint of a shadow towards the middle there, and a little highlight Little highlight right through there. Now we'll go to tooth number 4. And we start to darken along the top, creating that shadow from the lips, and start darkening these edges, and a little shadow along the bottom. Just a little hint of a shadow, and maybe a little darkening in the middle. Again, a little hint of a highlight right through there. Now we jump up to number 5, which is this guy right here. And we get our burn tool, shadow along the top, along the side, along this side, and along the middle. Now, if you look at your own mouth, you'll see that there's slight indentations in your front teeth, very slight, which sometimes, depending on how well this thing is being lit, those shadows could be accented quite a bit. So we added that, and here we're going to start giving it a little more highlights. So I'm going to make my brush a little bigger. I'll start throwing a bigger highlight right through here. And maybe get my brush smaller and throw a little highlight right there. Because now we're starting to really pick up some nice little light from the source of light in the room or wherever. Number 6, we burn the edges. And here we got this nice shadow happening from that side. We want to make it dark enough so that it differentiates itself from the 5th tooth. And we go to this side and we just start to darken along the top, shadow from the lip, and a little bit along the bottom, shadow from that lip as well. And maybe just a touch right there. We could add just a little bit of a highlight on this edge right here. Because now our light sources are starting to match up. See? Give it a little more just because it's kind of moist right there. Then tooth number 7, we'll go in there and burn it. Make it nice and dark along that edge, because now this tooth is starting to go into the distance there. So we need to have them start to get darker. They're going into the shadow, just like the lips are going into shadow. These teeth are going into shadow right there. Finally, number 8. Now, we're not seeing number 8, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the bottom lip right there. I'm going to give it a mask. Then I'm going to take the 8th tooth. I'm going to make it a selection by command clicking on it right there. And there we see that little overlap. So let's get in real close so we can see it. So I'm going to go in there, and in the mask, I'm going to paint that. I'm going to make it a smaller brush. I'm just going to paint lightly in there just to expose that tooth right there. And you notice I'm not using a 100% brush. I'm just lightly doing it, just giving me a little bit of an exposure at a time. There we go. So now I go to tooth number 8, and I burn it along the top, and make this one much darker than the one before, because that tooth is way off into the distance. There we see that we now have our teeth. So now if I need to go in here to number 1, give it a mask and erase this part that I don't want to see. I don't want to see this part that's sticking outside the mouth. Same thing with number 2. We'll give it a mask and we'll just erase that little part right through there like that. Now we need some gums. So behind the teeth, we'll just close this whole thing up, the whole layer. Behind here, we'll create 2 layers. One will be the gums, and one will be the inside. The gums, we'll pick up pink. Maybe we'll pick this light pink right there. Right? And I'm going to select an area. Let's bring this feather down to about a 2. And I'm going to select the area right here between the teeth. I'm going right between the teeth and coming around the lips. Right there. It encompasses that whole area. I'm going to fill it in the gums with that color. So I'm going to say, fill, foreground color, do it. Now, I'm going to give this just a little burning here and there. So I'm going to just burn it up here. I'm going to switch here to highlights because I want to make it darker tones. So I'm going to go in there and darken right along these edges, right along the top, and give it a little darkening right along here. Just along this side right there. And on the other side, I'm going to give it a little highlight because there's a little moisture on the gums right there. So just add a little highlight right through there. And we darken this last one here. Right through there, we darken that. Let's go in there and burn it. Right through there, darken that whole thing. Then the inside of the mouth, I'm going to select this whole section right here, which takes up that whole space right there. And I got that pink and this darker tone. Well, I'm going to go in there and use those. I'll use those with a radial gradient, a little gradient right in there like that, which I can then go in there and darken that. So I'm going to go into my hue saturation and darken that. So I go in and I'll just bring down saturation a bit and darken it. Click OK. Bring back our face, and there you can see that we have these lips that we've created by just playing around with the features in Photoshop.